Marvel Animation just dropped 3 episodes of X-Men 97 Season 2 on the same day. 3 at once. No warning, no easing us in. Just absolute timeline-bending chaos served cold, and the internet has been completely unhinged ever since. And here's the thing, this is not a slow build. These 3 episodes cover ancient Egypt 5,000 years in the past, a future 40 centuries from now, where the Atlantic Ocean has completely dried up, and the 90s all at once, simultaneously. The writers looked at a linear narrative structure and said, absolutely not. We are going everywhere. We are going to everywhen, and somehow, against all reasonable expectations, it works. It works so well that by the time episode 3 ends on that cliffhanger, you will be staring at your screen in the specific kind of delighted confusion that only the best comic book storytelling can produce. So let's go through all of it. Every Easter egg, every Star Trek cameo that deserves its own conversation, every timeline thread, and that absolutely wild ending that sets up what is shaping up to be the most ambitious animated Marvel season in history. Before we even get into the plot, the updated Marvel Animation intro is doing serious work. They've woven in traces of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Marvel Zombies, and Eyes of Wakanda, all the new animated series that have launched since Season 1. It's the animated universe quietly announcing that it's bigger now, more connected, and the X-Men 97 intro itself has evolved alongside it. The original Season 1 finale moments are still there, including the shot of Magneto ripping the Adamantium out of Wolverine's body, which still hits like a freight train every single time. But there are new additions that are doing a lot of narrative heavy lifting before a single episode plays. Gambit riding Wolverine like an ostrich, which is both hilarious and a very deliberate reminder that Gambit will be back, tying directly into that Season 1 post-credit scene. Forge and Bishop finding what appears to be a way to restore Wolverine's adamantium. Cable leading a future X-Force roster against Apocalypse's robots in the 2055 Age of Apocalypse timeline, a direct visual callback to the classic One Man's Worth episodes from the original animated series. And the X-Men falling through time into different eras, each image representing where our now fractured team is currently stranded. The intro is essentially a 3-minute roadmap of the season disguised as a credits sequence, and it's clever enough that you could watch it multiple times and keep catching new details. Episode 1 is titled Days of Past Future. That title is doing exactly what it sounds like. It's a flip of Days of Future Past, nodding simultaneously to the iconic comic arc, the original animated series, and signaling that this season is going to play with temporal mechanics in ways the franchise hasn't attempted before. The premise of the episode is Bishop and Forge operating out of Forge's cabin in the present, months after the X-Mansion was destroyed, trying to locate and retrieve X-Men who are scattered across time. They're using wristbands that are visually identical to the ones from the original 90s animated series, a small detail that is going to absolutely wreck fans of the original show. Forge has used his mutant power, which is literally the ability to build anything he can conceptualize without fully understanding the science behind it, to identify Apocalypse as the connective tissue linking all the temporal chaos across every timeline he's been able to map. And then the episode takes us to the future. Not the near future, not a few decades out, 4,000 years from now, and things are genuinely grim in a way that visual storytelling sells better than any amount of exposition. The Atlantic Ocean has completely dried up. Apocalypse drones that look pulled directly from Terminator patrol what's left. And then Forge gets saved by Wolverine, Bone Claw's classic brown and tan comic suit, and crucially, not yet fully feral. Logan has held on to enough of himself to still be Logan. That detail matters because the comics took him somewhere much darker, and the show is threading a very specific needle with how much has been lost and how much remains. Storm is in this future too, and she has a brilliant new futuristic suit that is genuinely stunning as a design choice. But she's hesitant to leave, and the reason she's hesitant is a small boy named Nathan Summers. This future storyline is a direct adaptation of the adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, one of the most beloved and emotionally complex X-Men comic runs of the 90s, and seeing it translated into this animation style is something fans of that run have been waiting a very long time for. Cyclops and Jean Grey are in this future raising young Nathan, teaching him to use his telepathy and telekinesis to hold back the techno-organic virus that is constantly threatening to consume him. The moment Nathan loses concentration, the virus advances. It is a constant, exhausting, unwinnable battle against his own body. And the emotional weight of watching Scott and Jean try to give him a childhood inside that reality is significant. Both of them has new futuristic suits that feel like the natural evolution of who these characters have become across decades of fighting. The group is being guided by a figure called Mother Ascani, and for casual fans, this is the reveal that is going to require a moment of explanation. Mother Ascani is Rachel Summers, Cyclops and Jean's daughter, from an alternate Days of Future Past timeline. She is the one who pulled the X-Men through time, using the Phoenix Force specifically to stop Apocalypse. She has been running this whole operation from behind the scenes, and if her voice sounded familiar, that is because she's voiced by Gates McFadden, Dr. Beverly Crusher, from Star Trek The Next Generation. The Star Trek casting in these episodes is not accidental, and we will come back to this. Apocalypse's base in this future has evolved beyond anything we saw in Season 1. It's no longer just a pyramid. It has become a massive ship, surrounded by the bodies of dead mutants. We get our first look at Ozymandias, the ancient mutant who has been enslaved and forced to serve as living stone. The walls of Apocalypse's chamber are covered in celestial designs that are going to look very familiar to anyone who watched Eternals, because the visual language is intentionally consistent. The ship itself, originally belonging to Kang the Conqueror, which is a detail we will absolutely be returning to, is sentient celestial technology of almost incomprehensible sophistication, and it bonds with Nathan in a way that functions like Cortana to Master Chief, if you need a quick reference point. This is how Cable eventually learns to time travel without needing the wristbands. The ship essentially teaches him. Apocalypse's final 4 horsemen are revealed here, and they are pulled closely from their comic counterparts. Pestilence, who comes from Edo period Japan and spawns consuming beetles from her mouth, which is as horrifying as it sounds. War, an ancient Roman mutant whose axe strike infects victims with a berserker rage that turns them against their own allies. Famine, a Confederate soldier whose drum beat literally destroys flesh. And Death, from ancient Persia, capable of transmitting lethal disease on contact. The fight sequence against the Horsemen features Morph transforming into both Thor and Deadpool in rapid succession, which is the kind of moment that exists purely for the joy of it and earns every second. Rachel Summers helps Storm unlock her full Omega-level potential during this battle, and what that looks like, a cosmic storm powerful enough to restart a downed SHIELD helicarrier, is the kind of visual that justifies the animation budget entirely. Nathan is left in the future to grow up into the Cable we know, while Apocalypse executes his contingency plan, jumping back to the 90s where he believes the X-Men are most vulnerable, which sets up everything that follows. Episode 2 shifts focus entirely to Cable and the formation of X-Force, and the title A Force to be Reckoned With is a direct callback to the tagline of X-Force Issue 1, which was one of the highest-selling comic books of the entire 90s. If you are a comics reader during that era, that title is going to hit a very specific nostalgia nerve. The episode opens in the present-day 90s with a group of young mutants, Chamber, Synch, and Prodigy among them, trying to seek refuge at the X-Mansion and getting captured by X-Factor, which is now a government-sponsored mutant team operating under Val Cooper. Jubilee shows up in her black vampire-era comic suit, which is a very specific deep-cut costume choice that will mean a lot to readers who followed her arc into the more gothic period of her history. She and Sunspot are at an arcade when Cable recruits her because she was one of the last people to actually see Apocalypse alive in the original series. Alongside Archangel and Psylocke, X-Force tracks down one of Apocalypse's original horsemen from the animated series. Emma Frost arrives, and her introduction is exactly what anyone who knows the character would hope for. She drips with the domineering, diamond-cold authority that defines Emma at her best. She threatens to make Cable bark like a dog, which honestly power, and then immediately double-crosses X-Force entirely, selling them out to X-Factor in exchange for amnesty for her Hellfire Club crimes. Emma Frost, being both the most compelling person in the room and also the one who just stabbed everyone in the back, is extremely on-brand and extremely satisfying to watch play out. The current X Factor roster is worth noting because it's pulling from some genuinely interesting comic material. Havoc, Cyclops' younger brother who has lived perpetually in the shadow of being the other Summer's brother. Multiple Man, Polaris, who is Magneto's daughter and carries the specific complicated weight of that lineage. Strong Guy, Wolfsbane. It's a team assembled from characters who have historically existed in the margins of the main X-Men narrative, and the show treats them with enough specificity that they feel like real people rather than supporting tasked placeholders. Jubilee absolutely dismantles X-Factor verbally throughout the episode, calling them mall cops and a C-list knockoff team, and the show lets her be right without being cruel about it. Her hallway fight scene on rollerblades is a genuine highlight, kinetic and character-specific in a way that great action sequences should always be. She frees a pile of captured mutants from stasis tubes, including Dust, the Stepford Cuckoos, and Maggot, which is a level of deep-cut comic casting that is going to send certain readers into an immediate spiral of nostalgia. X-Force escapes, but the episode closes on Cable realizing something critical is missing. Apocalypse's machine, the Frankenstein-esque device Cable has been tracking, is gone, and the implication of where it went is exactly as exciting as you want it to be, because that machine is almost certainly how Gambit comes back, Death returning. It's been telegraphed since the Season 1 post-credits scene, and every piece of setup in these 3 episodes is pointing toward that moment. Episode 3 throws us 5,000 years into the past, to ancient Egypt, and it is adapting one of the genuinely great pieces of X-Men comic lore, the Rise of Apocalypse origin story. Professor X, Magneto, and Beast are stranded here, and they discover a spherical Sphinx-like ship that longtime Marvel readers are going to recognize immediately, even before the episode says the name out loud. The ship belongs to Rama-Tut, and Rama-Tut is Kang the Conqueror. Full stop. Using classic Fantastic Four comic lore, Kang traveled to ancient Egypt to get his hands on celestial technology. At this point in his timeline, he doesn't particularly care about Apocalypse. The mutant is not yet his concern. He wants the tech. He is a conqueror, and this is the resource worth conquering. The casting choice here is another Star Trek deep cut. Rama-Tut is voiced by John Delancey, who played the omnipotent Q in The Next Generation. The casting director for this season deserves a specific and sincere round of applause, because this is not happening by accident. These choices are intentional and layered, and they reward decades of genre television fandom in a way that feels genuinely loving, rather than just referential. We meet Baal in this episode, the ruthless leader of Clan Akaba, who found the infant Sabah abandoned in the desert, and raised him under the brutal philosophy of survival of the fittest. Baal is voiced by Michael Dorn, Worf from The Next Generation. The Star Trek casting has reached a level of commitment that is almost audacious. The question this episode places at the center of its drama is genuinely interesting and philosophically rich enough to carry an entire arc on its own. Magneto, desperate to prevent the catastrophic future he has just witnessed, decides to attempt something unprecedented. What if they raise Sabah to be good? What if the first mutant villain could instead have become the first X-Man? It's the kind of counterfactual that the comics have danced around, but never fully committed to. And this animated universe is in a unique position to actually explore it, because the time travel rules here allow for genuine timeline alteration. Unlike the MCU's branching timeline mechanics, changing the past in X-Men 97 changes your own future. The stakes of Magneto's gamble are real, but the episode is honest about how this plays out. Sabah is subjected to cruelties that the show depicts with enough weight to make the tragedy feel earned. The general who murdered his mother and enslaved him returns, and every act of violence pushes the young mutant further from the path Magneto was hoping to create for him. When Professor X probes the general's mind during this confrontation, the vision he receives is a broken moon. And for anyone who knows their X-Men history, that image carries an enormous amount of dread, because it is a clear tease for Onslaught, the psychic entity, the thing that emerges from the darkest parts of Charles Xavier's mind when pushed past certain limits. That broken moon is not a background detail, it is the show planting a flag. Despite everything, Sabah crosses his threshold. He fully becomes what history always recorded him as. He speaks the line from the very first episode of the original animated series, "I am the rocks of the eternal shore," crash against me and be broken. And the weight of hearing it here in this context, after watching the episode try to give him another path and fail, is genuinely affecting. It is one thing to know the villain as an abstract force of power. It is another to watch the moment the human possibility closes off. The episode ends with Bishop arriving in ancient Egypt, the time travel mechanics now operating across multiple threads simultaneously, and Kang unleashing a devastating energy blast directly at Apocalypse. Roll credits. What Season 2 is doing across these 3 episodes is something that animated television rarely attempts at this scale. It is running 3 distinct timeline threads simultaneously, asking the audience to hold the future, the present, and the ancient past in their heads at once, and trusting that the emotional logic of each story is strong enough to carry its own weight without constant hand-holding. The overlapping character relationships, Cable as the child Cyclops and Jean, raised in a future he has now left behind. Magneto trying to rewrite the origin of the man he watched destroy everything. Storm discovering what her full power actually looks like. They're all connected to the same thematic question: can you change what was always going to happen? And what does it cost you to find out that you can't? Gambit is coming back as Death. Onslaught is being teased through a broken moon vision. The Age of Apocalypse is being constructed in real time across multiple centuries simultaneously. And Rama-Tut, is now physically present in the origin story of the X-Men's greatest villain. So here's what I need from you in the comments. Are you fully caught up on all 3 episodes? And if so, what landed hardest for you? And the big question going forward, when Gambit comes back as the Horseman of Death, how long do you think it takes before he breaks free of Apocalypse's control? Because that moment, whenever it comes, is going to be one of the most emotionally loaded sequences this show has ever produced. Drop everything below